Hello and welcome to episode 123 of Things I've Learned from Barry Harris. And today I thought we would take two really special things that we do with chords or Barry scales of chords. One of them is playing drop twos, and the second one is going to be using contrary motion. And for those of you that don't know what contrary motion is, it's when you take one note, move it one direction, and the other note and move it in the opposite direction. Or it could be moving them this way or moving them this way. And I'll show you. The first thing you have to know is, because we're going to use one of Barry's scales of chords as the example, and for this one we're taking C minor 6 diminished scale. So for those of you that don't know, the C minor 6 diminished scale is two things. It's a C minor 6 and it's a D diminished. And you put the four notes of the C minor 6 together with the four notes of the D diminished, and you get this beautiful 8-note scale. So what it is here's the four notes of C minor 6, C, E flat, G, A. And you take the four notes of D diminished, D, F, A flat, B, and you put them together, and there's our beautiful 8-note scale. Now, as a guitar player, most of the time what we go right to is what we call drop twos. And what drop twos are four consecutive strings. So here's our four consecutive strings. So our first voicing would right away be C, G, A, E flat. There's our first voicing. So let's play this up the scale. If we play this up the scale, another thing that makes this scale beautiful is it only consists of two chords, C minor 6, D diminished. Now once we get up to the E flat, it's a first inversion of C minor 6. When we get up to the F, another inversion of D diminished. G is another inversion of C minor 6. A flat, another inversion of D diminished. A, another inversion of C minor 6. B, another inversion of D diminished, and so on. There's our C minor 6 again. So we have to know these in drop twos. And then back down. So there it is. So now we're going to combine that with something that Barry calls contrary motion. Well, it's not just Barry, but it's contrary motion where the notes move separately. And we're going to start with something. See, the contrary motion thing I really learned. I used to know how to do these like contrary motion, but I would always only take two notes. I would only use two notes. And then once I was in touch with Thomas Eccles, he has this beautiful system, especially that works beautiful for guitar, this elevator system. So it taught me that you don't just play one note and just keep these two separate, which is fine, but then you always only have two notes, which is fine. But I can remember all the time in piano class, Barry would have the class do this, or the piano players do this, and then he would say, okay, now fill it in. And once he said fill it in, I was lost. But what he meant by fill it in was, you got the first one, which is one note, a third, a triad. So now you have two notes, but then he has you play a note in between those two notes. That's a triad. The next one. Now, piano can actually do four notes in between those, but we don't do that. We can just do three notes, which is beautiful. And then here's our octave chord. So what we have for guitar, what Thomas' system says is one note, thirds, triads. He calls this a shell voice, but I call it a broken drop two. And then octave chord. So that's what we're going to do, which is really a beautiful thing. Just that in contrary motion is gorgeous. And you should be able to know this from every degree. That's from the root, from the second, from the third, and so on. You should be able to know it. But what I like to do is combine it with practicing drop twos. So the way that I thought of it, and it's just one exercise, it's nice, everybody can come up with their own. But I started on the C minor 6, the first one. And then I skipped the floor of the single note, I went right to thirds. So I started on C minor 6. Then I used two notes, which is a third, and I used the A flat and the B. And then I used a triad, which for this one's kind of tough. It's G, A, and C. So I said, and now the next one is a shell voice of a diminished, which I used F, A flat, and D. I could have used F, B, and D, but I like F, A for this particular one. And then it leads us to the D has to move up to the E flat, and the F moves down to E flat also. So we get one of our octave chords, what Thomas calls octave chords, which means the bottom note and the top note are identical. So here's what I have for this. And what's nice is the very next chord of the drop 2 is this D diminished. So what happens is it continues the contrary motion. The last one we ended up was E flat, E flat. Now the E flat, high E flat moves to F, the low E flat moves down to D. So it's beautiful, it works perfectly. So we say, next one, D diminished. Now we're going to do the same thing for this. So we'll start on A and C. We'll move it to a triad from A flat, broken drop 2 from G, and then an octave chord from F, which leads us to our next one, which is E flat. Beautiful also, which then we'll move to thirds, to triad, broken drop 2, and then to our octave chord, and then will lead us to our next diminished, which is really beautiful. And then octave chord again, and that leads us to drop 2. So let me just see if I can do a couple of them. What's the next one? Oh, diminished. It's just a nice way to not only practice your drop 2s, but now you're also seeing these little inner voices move. So it's just a very nice exercise, I think. And again, you can come up with any one you want. You could start at any note. You could have started with just one note, thirds. That would have worked nicely too. But what I like about this one is it leads you perfectly to the next drop 2. That's what I like, the voices moving in an exact way. So it's just a little exercise, but it's very helpful to get you to see C minor 6 every place. See? To really see C minor 6. Oh, sorry. I mean to just see it everywhere. Love this exercise. It's really something. Now you say, okay, well, where am I going to use it? Anytime you use a C minor 6 or A minor 7/5/5. If we're playing, we'll say, oh, let's do it from here. Let's do it from here. So let's try it again. From A minor 7/5/5. We can do it right from there. Or we'll start with the chord. We'll say. Going to G major. A minor 7/5/5 to D7, going to G major for the bridge of all the things you are. Really pretty. So you can start. So pretty. So sometimes the catch to these things, or the trick to it, is after you've practiced these things and you have them in your fingers, You got to find a really nice placement for it. So also, anytime you're going back to C minor, so let's say if we're playing a song, works perfectly. I mean, it works perfectly, and I mean, they work so well. I mean, I don't have them perfect in my hand, but it just shows you different ways to practice the sixth diminished is fantastic. And as if you're a Barry person, you know, not only do you practice them with minor sixth diminished, you can practice them with major sixth diminished. You can practice them with dominant seventh diminished. You can practice them with dominant 7/5/5 diminished. It's endless amount of things. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and until next time, keep practicing in minor sixth diminished.